Welcome back, Defenders. Jake here. The NATO Summit in Lithuania has officially ended, and for an update on the ground, let's check in with Oleksiy Goncharenko.
Hello to everybody from Vilnius. The NATO Summit in Vilnius is finished. These days, Vilnius was the geopolitical capital of the world. You can see the airplane number one of US Force number one, presidential airplane. You can see United Kingdom, you can see Germany, the other planes. That is a clear signal how important is what's going here. So what we can tell and what the results of the summit. That is not historical summit, unfortunately. The West did not make a very bold and courageous decision to give official invitation for Ukraine to join NATO. Ukraine was 85% of everything which was discussed there. 10% Sweden, and my congratulations to Sweden for final decision with Turkey that Sweden will become member of NATO. I was absolutely sure. And 5% everything else. So Ukraine was the main topic. But the language in the final communique is not really strong. Putin understands only language of force.
So for Ukraine's strongest supporters, the NATO summit was a bit of a disappointment. West offers frustrated Ukraine security commitments outside of NATO. And here's President Zelensky addressing the media, talking about the lack of the invitation.
New weapon packages for supporting our army on the battlefield, and that is one. The second, I think, the invitation to NATO, and we want to be on the same page with everybody, with all the understanding. And for today, what we hear and understand that we'll have this invitation when security measures will allow. Yes, so I want to discuss with our partners all these things, and the sword will speak today and fight for this. Its security guarantees for Ukraine on the way to NATO. Thank you so much.
So Ukraine wasn't expecting to join NATO anytime soon, but they were hoping for a formal invitation to get on the path to eventually joining NATO. Instead, this is what NATO told Ukraine. When members agree and conditions are met. So there are people who support Ukraine very strongly who are upset with NATO for not formally extending this invitation at the summit in Lithuania. And President Zelensky is being very transparent what his concern is. So this is what he tweeted out, and I think this is important to read. This is what he says. And I would like to emphasize that this wording is about the invitation to become a NATO member, not about Ukraine's membership. It's unprecedented and absurd when time frame is not set, neither for the invitation nor for Ukraine's membership, while at the same time, vague wording about conditions is being added for even inviting Ukraine to join NATO. It seems there is no readiness neither to invite Ukraine to NATO nor to make it a member of the alliance. This means that a window of opportunity is being left to bargain Ukraine's membership in NATO in negotiations with Russia. And for Russia, this means motivation to continue its terror. So the concern that the Ukrainians have is that NATO will bypass Ukraine and negotiate directly with the Russians and tell Russia, we'll recognize Crimea. You'll be allowed to keep Crimea forever. In exchange, we're going to invite Ukraine to join NATO. Ukraine does not accept this. Ukraine does not want this. They're going to verbally tell everyone this over and over. So President Zelensky was very clear. This is what he told the NATO alliance in Lithuania. We will never exchange any status for any part of our territories, even if it's just one village with one grandpa there. So Ukraine's final position is that all of their territory must be returned. Kherson, Zaporizhia, Luhansk, Donetsk, Crimea. And they're not willing to give away territory for Russia to allow them to join NATO in the future. Very clear, very strong language from President Zelensky. So when will Ukraine join NATO? And the obvious answer is when the war is over, when Russia has been defeated and they've been expelled from all of Ukraine's territory. So here was a fun moment where the press is asking President Biden and Zelensky, when will Ukraine join NATO?
President Zelensky, how soon after the war would you like to be in NATO? How soon after the war would you like to join NATO?
An hour and 20 minutes. You guys ask really insightful questions.
So when asked how soon after the war is over will Ukraine join NATO, President Biden said an hour and 20 minutes. So let's hold him to that. But let's not overshadow, there was still lots of good news for Ukraine. The biggest news, I think, is that France officially is sending their Scalp cruise missiles to Ukraine. With the French donation of the Scalp cruise missile, Ukraine receives another long-range weapon to strike targets far beyond the front. So here's the tweet from French President Emmanuel Macron. To help Ukraine defend its territory more effectively, France will deliver new long-range missiles. So I gave him a tweet down below, Vive la France. So this is big news. I don't know how many British Storm Shadow cruise missiles have been delivered, but Britain doesn't have an unlimited supply, so it's fantastic that the French military is stepping up and delivering their own version of the British Storm Shadow. This can go 300 kilometers, and we've already seen pictures and videos of what this cruise missile can do. So it's going to be another bad couple of months for the Russian supply lines. In addition, lots of other great news. I don't know if I caught it all. Every member of the NATO alliance is doing their best to help Ukraine, aside from Hungary. But Norway is transferring 2 more NASAM air defense systems. Thank you so much, Norway. In addition, they will increase their military support for Ukraine by 2.5 billion crowns, 239 USD, for a total of 10 billion crowns this year. So fantastic, Norway. Australia is not even in NATO, and they announced they'll be sending an additional 30 Bushmaster protected mobility vehicles. The Ukrainians absolutely love this vehicle from Australia. Germany announced a very large military aid package. Included in it is 6 Gepard self-propelled anti-aircraft guns. These are really good at shooting down these Iranian Shahed drones. But the biggest thing that Germany is now committed to sending to Ukraine is an additional 2 Patriot air defense systems. Ukraine really needs these. If they can get more air defense systems, specifically the Patriot, missiles won't effectively hit civilian targets as much. But Ukraine really needs these Patriot air systems down on the front lines, both in Kherson, Zaporizhia, and maybe even the Donbass region. And Russia is deliberately targeting Lviv and Kyiv and far beyond the front lines in order to hold these Patriot systems already delivered far from the front lines. But I guarantee you, as soon as Ukraine gets more of these, they will show up in Kherson, they will show up in Zaporizhia, and it's going to be a turkey shoot for Russian helicopters and jets trying to fly combat missions. The United Kingdom also announced an additional $65 million defense package. Thank you so much to my British viewers. Spain will provide Ukrainian border guards with a mobile hospital and vehicles with medical equipment to evacuate the wounded. Thank you so much, Spain. Sweden signed an agreement on cooperation with defense procurement. This is good news for Ukraine and good news for Swedish companies such as Saab. 2 factories in the United States and 6 factories across the EU have now formalized their plan to supply Ukraine with 3 million 155mm artillery shells for the year 2024. I don't know if at the moment Russia still has an artillery advantage as they continue drawing down their Soviet stockpiles, But eventually, the defense outputs of the Western alliance will overtake the Russians. The Ukrainians are already more accurate with their artillery fire, making every shell count. But as soon as Ukraine has the artillery advantage, more shells are being produced in Western countries and being delivered to Ukraine. That's going to be game over for the Russians on the front lines. And we mentioned this in the last video, the formalization of the F-16 alliance for Ukraine, but the timetable is rather disappointing. Training for Ukrainian pilots on F-16s will officially begin in August. So the pilots are already on site, studying manuals, logging time in simulators, but as far as training on the actual jets, that hasn't started. So NATO is saying training could take 6 to 8 months, and F-16s aren't expected to be on the battlefield by March of 2024. This could be sped up, potentially, but yeah, 8 more months until F-16s arrive. This is good news. Ukrainian general tells CNN that Kyiv has received cluster munitions from the United States, says that they can radically change the situation on the battlefield. So the rumor that I'm hearing is that Ukraine already has a stockpile of cluster munitions. Ukraine never signed the treaty banning the use of cluster munitions. Neither did the United States, neither did Russia. But Ukraine didn't want to use their stockpile of cluster munitions because so many NATO members have banned this weapon. So what Ukraine needed was for the United States to send their own cluster munitions in order to give Ukraine political cover to start using their own domestically produced cluster munitions. So I do think this has unlocked a huge cache of artillery rounds, both from Ukraine and the United States. All this is coming for the Russians over the next month or two. We'll see if it makes a difference on the battlefield. One thing that was not mentioned at the NATO Summit was Attackems. The United States has still not announced if Attackems will be delivered, and President Zelensky was asked this question, and he gave a very interesting response.
Коли ми отримаємо ATACMS? Дякую.
Не знаю.
So that's an interesting response. President Zelensky has a big smile on his face and just says, I don't know when Attackems will be delivered. So the rumor, once again, is that President Biden met with Zelensky in person and verbally told him that Attackems will be announced next week. Why next week and why not at the NATO Summit? And it's about managing the media. Because so much was happening this weekend, so many things were announced, by just waiting a week, you're getting Ukraine back in the headlines. Once the United States formally announces they're sending Attackems, this will be a top news story once again. So Ukraine is getting a lot of attention in the media, in the press. That's a good thing. And then a week from now, Ukraine will be in the press, in the media once again. So President Zelensky has hopes for victory within the next year. This war is probably going to go on for another 6 months, deep into this winter. But this winter is going to be Russia's third winter in Ukraine. Russia's having a presidential election in March of next year. By May, another sad Victory Day parade in Moscow. So I think things are changing. GLSDB will be arriving this fall. Abrams tanks by the end of the summer. Attackems next week. F-16s by spring. Russia's only hope for winning this war is that the West and the NATO alliance will grow tired of it and then abandon their support for Ukraine. This just isn't going to happen. It's not going to happen before Russia breaks. Before Russia, wants to give up on this war first. So here they are on Kremlin State TV, more or less admitting how bad the situation is for them. Here's an unbelievable clip of the Russians saying they need to be more aggressive trying to recruit mercenaries from North Korea and Afghanistan. So I'm going to read the clip for you. Today there was information that the Americans have opened recruiting depots for volunteers to Ukraine. I don't know what he's talking about. If you're an American veteran and you want to go volunteer in Ukraine, you can contact the Ukrainian embassy and put in an application. But we are not opening depots to recruit thousands of Americans to go fight in Ukraine. But this guy says, I wonder why don't we do that also? We have North Korea with excellent and motivated fighters who will fight for $2,000 or $5,000. Who has ever described North Korean soldiers as being excellent and motivated? Mujahideen from Afghanistan will fight well too. I think this is an issue our commanders need to work on. I think they are very motivated and experienced fighters, and for the money we pay at the front, for the money mixed with the hatred of Americans, they would make excellent specialists. I hope there is some work being done. We'll just be told at the last minute. I really hope so, and maybe we'll be heard. Oleksiy, what do you think? I fully support it. Who needs to be mobilized? North Koreans and Chinese. Popov, and we too, we are already mobilizing every day, that's for sure. I went to the embankment at the weekend. At night, there are only migrants on the Kremlin embankment. One could make a movie. They should be sent to the front for us. That would be good. So Russia's taking horrendous losses. Prigozhin confirmed when he took over the southern military district that Russia is taking over 1,000 casualties a day. Killed, wounded, taken prisoner, or going AWOL. So Russia is hemorrhaging soldiers, and they're so desperate. On Kremlin State TV, they're talking about paying Afghani mercenaries and North Koreans. North Koreans probably are the worst soldiers in the world. It is a slave army serving the cult of Kim Jong-un. And it's so bad. If North Korea actually sent soldiers to Ukraine, all the Ukrainians would have to do is drone drop choco pies on them, and they would kill their Russian overseers and surrender en masse. The North Korean soldier who defected to the south is getting a lifetime supply of choco pies. Because when asked, why did you defect to the south? This was a huge incident like 6 or 7 years ago, but he said he just wanted choco pies. That's all he wanted, to betray his supreme leader, Kim Jong-un, betray his country, betray his people. All he wanted was choco pies. So these are the mercenaries that the Russians are considering paying for and sending to Ukraine to fight for Russia. Yeah. More bad news for the Russians. Major Russian General Ivan Popov, 58th Combined Arms Air Defense Army Commander, recorded a message saying that he was relieved from duty from his position. So this is a 4-minute clip. I'll link it down below. It's subtitled if you want to read it for yourself. But he says he was removed from his position for telling the truth to high command. He complains that the Russians don't have counter-battery capabilities and means of reconnaissance. He then accuses the higher command of stabbing them in the back and beheading the army in its most trying times. So this was a competent and capable Russian general that was very respected by his soldiers, trying to bring about change to save the Russian war effort, and Gerasimov and Shoigu fired him because he was speaking the truth. You're not allowed to speak the truth in Russia. So this is good news for Ukraine. In addition, Russia's best soldiers, the Wagner mercenaries, are now off the battlefield, and they've been defanged. Wagner turns over 2,000 heavy weapons, including tanks, surface-to-air missile systems. The Russian MOD claims Prigozhin turned over high-end weapons like T-90 tanks, howitzers, and MLRS systems. So here's the video that the Russian MOD put out, once again trying to reassure their own people that the Wagner group isn't going to try and, blitzkrieg take Moscow again. But for all the people out there saying that the mutiny was fake and that Wagner was going to be redeployed to Belarus to attack Ukraine from the north, attack Ukraine with what? They just gave up all their stuff that they had, put back into the hands of incompetent Russian generals who lie about everything. Good job, Russia. And during the Wagner mutiny, we got some financial information. Russians withdrew over $1 billion from banks during that 48-hour rebellion. So people in Moscow were panicking, going to the local ATMs, trying to get as much physical cash as they could out of the banks before they maybe shut down. This probably contributed to the recent decline of the Russian ruble. At the moment, today, 1 Russian ruble is now the equivalent of 1 US penny. 1 cent. Yeah, not going well. So when we check in with the front lines, the Ukrainians still are making progress, measured in meters and kilometers. Very slow, very steady. But this is no longer the counteroffensive we were all hoping for. We can have this honest conversation. And a YouTube video I want to recommend for you guys, I'll link it down below, is from Anders Puck Nielsen. He's in the Danish Navy. He's an officer. And it's titled, How is the War Going? Mid-July 2023. And Anders very accurately describes that Ukraine is now switching to attrition warfare. Everything Ukraine is doing in Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk, it's to drain the Russian military of personnel and material as efficiently as possible, because Russia has a larger population and large Soviet stockpiles. The only way Ukraine can win is if they outratio them. They have to kill more and destroy more in order to win this war. So Ukraine has all the initiative at the moment. They're picking and choosing where they want to fight, and they're only going to fight when it favors them, when they can probably get a 3-to-1 ratio given this position or this day or this time. So yeah, this is going to drag on for a while as the bulk of Ukraine's counteroffensive forces haven't been committed anywhere. They've not been committed to Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, or Luhansk. So Ukraine is waiting for weakness. They're waiting for a significant event, a break in the lines, and then that's when they're going to commit the bulk of their counteroffensive forces. Final couple feel-good clips I got for you guys. The first one is from Colombian volunteers fighting as part of the Carpathian Sich Battalion. So they're fighting for Ukraine.
Los santos, 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 Señor Rey de los ejércitos cielos, lleno están los cielos y la tierra de vuestra gloria, por los siglos de los siglos. Amén. Amén.
Saying a prayer before going into battle against the Russians. Glory to the Colombian Heroes. Final video I got for you guys is a Ukrainian dog singing the Ukrainian national anthem. Well done. I demand the full album. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, Give me a thumbs up, best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.